He booked the table under my name and ordered for two. Hook. The notification hit my phone like a small, polite slap. Your reservation at Bar Verona is confirmed for 9:15 p.m. Party of two. I hadn't made it. The text under the confirmation was my own full name, spelled correctly, which is how I knew my husband had booked it. He's the only one who doesn't shorten me when he says me. The next thing to arrive was a photo in the restaurant's tagged stories. A slow pan across their marble bar, bright with bottles and couples, and at the edge, just long enough for recognition, a frame of his jacket sleeve and a man's hand resting like punctuation on his wrist. I am Felix, 35. I write product descriptions that are supposed to make people feel something about things that will not feel anything about them back. My husband, Jonah, teaches set design and spends a disturbing amount of time making empty rooms look like they deserve your attention. 4 years into our marriage, we had become a well-oiled collection of choreography and kindness. We woke each other gently, we fed each other well, and at night we lay like parentheses, curved toward a sentence we hadn't had the courage to write in months. At 9:12 I stood outside Bar Verona and read my own name off the host stand like a man practicing an alibi. The host stared at his screen as if the truth could be listed alphabetically. "He's already here," he said, and tilted his head toward the corner banquette where the shadows are flattering by design. Jonah sat with his body angled like an apology, and across from him was a man whose attention made the table look smaller. The man looked up at me as if the story had just decided to get interesting. He wore a suit that did not care whether anyone noticed it. He lifted his fingers in something that wasn't quite a wave and wasn't quite surrender. His mouth did an almost smile. He stood, because he had manners, and held out a hand as if he were introducing himself to a boardroom, and not the person he had been texting my husband past midnight. "Alex," he said. His palm was warm in a way that felt like gravity, rather than heat. "Felix," I said back. I heard the steadiness of it with the same surprise you hear your own voice in a recording. Jonah's face did relief and then flinched like a muscle. He stood. He did not touch me. He waited. The waiter arrived with two water glasses that pretended to be for something more expensive, set them down and vanished with the speed of a man who has learned where not to be when weather starts. "We were going to tell you tomorrow," Jonah said. He said it like a sentence that had rehearsed in his mouth and finally found its way out. "Tomorrow is a city we don't live in," I said. "Tell me here." He looked at Alex. Alex held his gaze with something like kindness and something like accuracy, and then sat, giving us a stage Jonah and I had built together. "I kissed him," Jonah said. "Twice. Once because I wanted to be looked at like a discovery and not a colleague. Once because I wanted to hurt the version of us that keeps being excellent at not being urgent. Both times I thought of you. Both times I kept going." There is a particular misery in honest sentences. They make your clever ones die in your throat. I stared at the very precise knot of Jonah's tie, and then at the place on Alex's wrist where his watch strap had worn the faintest darker band into his skin. Alex had the kind of face that looks even better in forgiving light. He was beautiful in the expensive mistake way, exact without apology. I wanted to be noble and failed where people usually do. I wanted to see what my husband saw when he forgot he already had enough. The waiter returned and asked if we wanted to order. Alex said, gently but with the authority that makes rooms behave, 2 Negronis and whatever the chef is proud of tonight, and a third glass. He looked at me. "You can stay or you can leave. Either choice will be true. If you stay, I will answer anything you ask me. If you leave, I will take him outside and he will tell you on a sidewalk that smells like last night's rain. But I prefer candor with better lighting." I sat because standing would have been a moral I could not afford. Alex watched the choice land in the curve of my shoulders and did nothing with the information except respect it. The Negronis glowed like something old money had melted down for your benefit. Jonah's hand crept to the edge of the table and then remembered to behave. Alex's stayed where it had been placed, near his glass, as if it had been trained. "Do you love him?" I asked Alex. He did not blink. "No," he said. "I love making hungry people accurate." He tilted his head. "Do you?" "Yes," I said, and Jonah's throat moved like a man about to drink. I picked up my glass and the cold of it pressed itself into my palm, convinced that sensation was an argument. Alex leaned back and studied me the way a person studies a blueprint of a place they've never been but already want to criticize. He wasn't cruel. He was a man who enjoyed knowing where the edges were. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked. The question was not taunting, it was service. "Yes," I said, because I am a man who likes the sound of a door when it has made a good decision. "Thank you," I added, because I was raised to put manners on the mouth of my need. He nodded once, tapped Jonah's wrist with 2 fingers in a gesture that was almost a blessing and almost a warning, and went. He passed me close enough that the heat near his shoulder sketched a line across my chest. It was suggestive the way the right adjective is: precise, accurate, cruel to the wrong noun. The waiter reappeared with a small mercy in the shape of plates and left us alone with food neither of us was hungry for. Jonah reached across the table but did not touch my hand on the first try. I let him fail once. Then I put my palm over his wrist and felt the erratic certainty of his pulse like a metronome getting back to itself. "I don't want to make speeches," he said. "I don't want to be forgiven because I described the geometry of my mistakes well." "You won't be," I said. "You will be forgiven because I decide to stay after the part where I get to be right." We did not romanticize our pain. We ate anchovies we didn't deserve and sipped at a bitter we did. Jonah told me there were messages and 2 nights and a room that made him feel like a rumor of himself he wanted to see if he could stand. He said my name in a rhythm that made it sound like a testimonial. He put his other hand under the table on my knee like a man who remembers he is allowed to be obvious. I let my fingers trace the inside of his wrist where his pulse had a house. If this sounds erotic, it was in the way heat becomes grammar in a sentence that finally stops qualifying itself. We paid because someone had to, and we stepped into air that pretended to be cooler than we were. On the walk home, I did not ask whose coat he had left in the cloakroom at the glassworks, which is what men in sumptuously lit rooms call lofts when they want to get away with it. I did not say the word betrayal out loud because it would have felt like an RSVP to drama neither of us had time to cater. We went upstairs, and in our kitchen I taped a square of blue painter's tape to the window and wrote 807 in pencil above it. Jonah looked at the number and the square and then at me, and nodded the way a man nods when he has been told his heart will need physical therapy every day for the rest of his life. The next night we stood there and made a minute behave. He put his hand between my shoulder blades in the square that tells my body it is allowed to be impatient and be loved at the same time. We kept it YouTube clean. My throat forgot to be clever. Afterward, we sat on the couch and let a movie we weren't watching play pretend to help. We kissed like a postscript that managed to be a message anyway. He fell asleep with his face turned toward me. I watched the part of him that had been addressed to someone else rest in my lap and decided I liked the wait. A week later, Alex walked past the bar at the restaurant where I consult and nobody at his table realized he was the most interesting thing in the room. He lifted 2 fingers in a greeting that was all lowercase, the smallest request for acknowledgement a man can make without buying anything. I nodded back and then turned to check the rye inventory, because the opposite of jealousy is work. At 3:15 on a Thursday, my phone buzzed with a push alert neither of us admitted to programming. Listen to 11 seconds of water, it said. I did. Present/bus stop, I texted Jonah. Present/model shop, he wrote back, which is designed for I'm sanding the splinter before you catch it. I stopped on a bench that had no right to be comfortable and let the advice-free kindness land. People ask with the solemnity of bathroom lines whether there was a villain. They want me to point at a man in a soft-shouldered suit with good hair, a bar that thinks it invented intimacy, a husband who forgot that attention is a drug you can take at home. The truth humiliates us equally. The villain was the version of us that outsourced urgency to lighting and logistics. The hero was a minute that tolerated repetition until we did. The erotic part was not the room with flattering shadows. It was the hand that remembered where it belonged, and the mouth that said my name like it was a headline worth printing twice. Tonight at 7:19, I will make a reservation under yes and leave the notes field blank because I am learning to be surprised by the right person in the right room. If I see Alex, I will be polite. He did something almost generous by leaving. Jonah will meet me at the window at 8:07 with his palm and his apology and the specific heat of a man who knows his mouth is allowed to be obvious again. If we miss it, we will do the only miracle that tolerates repetition. Try again. 8:17, 10, 11. Whenever Mercy takes walk-ins. The door at home is better. It opens when we knock twice and ask for the truth.